For me, there's no way you're getting to, even by year end, you're not going to 200 to $250,000. Is it possible 100,000 if we see risk on? The answer is yeah. 100,000 is a potential target by year end if that risk on environment stays. But I do think, again, it's all a liquidity bubble at this point, and as long as that continues, then Bitcoin could easily hit 100K by end of year. I continue to be this massive bull on the Bitcoin narrative longer term, but the
Right.
problem is that when you get these massive runs, people generally will buy the top just before the pullback, and then when it drops 20 or 30%, most of them are not the maxis that are going to hold on, and they end up taking losses. And we saw this in 2021 as well.
Bitcoin on Monday fell below $68,000 after climbing to a new record high near $74,000 on Thursday. Standard Chartered raised its year-end forecast for Bitcoin's price to $150,000 from $100,000. The bank also predicted Bitcoin would reach a high for the cycle of $250,000 next year, before settling around $200,000. Rich Dad Poor Dad, author Robert Kiyosaki, has a new target of $300,000 for Bitcoin price, as the crypto asset hits an all-time high. Gareth Soloway, chief market strategist at verifiedinvesting.com, suggests that reaching $200,000 to $250,000 by the end of the year appears improbable. However, he speculates that touching $100,000 could be feasible if the risk-on environment continues. On Friday, the first triple witching day of 2024, stocks experienced a decline as Bitcoin continued its descent from the record high attained earlier in the week. The Nasdaq Composite dropped by 1% on Friday, concluding the week with a 0.7% decrease, marking its second consecutive week of losses. The S&P 500 ended the week 0.1% lower after experiencing a 0.7% decline on Friday. The Dow Jones Industrial Average saw a 0.5% slip, ending the week with negligible change. Meanwhile, Bitcoin fell to approximately $68,000 on Friday. Despite initially predicting a potential drop to $10,000 in the event of a stock market collapse, Soloway now views Bitcoin's vulnerability as stemming from a liquidity crisis rather than a market crash. At the same time, he doesn't foresee Bitcoin returning to $10,000 unless under extreme circumstances like a depression. He indicates the possibility of a retracement to $30,000 to $32,000 during significant market downturns. Ready to uncover more insights? Remember to subscribe and turn on notifications always to get our latest content.
Had this incredible run where we really kickstarted it after the initial pullback on the spot ETF approval. We had that 20% correction, which to be honest was kind of a classic correction. It was a sell the news event. There was so much bullishness coming into the approval, and then you kind of got a sell the news portion there. But really what we've seen is that risk on continued in the overall asset markets, right? So we saw Nvidia just going nuts. We've seen semiconductors as a whole going nuts. And there's this animal spirits that everyone is chasing that next big gain. And again, while Bitcoin could go up a little bit higher, and again, I have a couple targets, but you mentioned the 75,000 level. I think it's worth just showing a few other possibilities. There's something called a measured move, where if we take the low of the last cycle to the
Yep.
recent high of the 2021 cycle, that's a 65, almost $66,000 move. The concept here is that you ultimately replicate that move here, and that would actually take us up to about, I think it's right around that $80,000 target. So again, I think as long as it's a risk on environment, you're likely going to see potentially further upside in Bitcoin. My only fear is this, right? Is that if we see the S&P start to crumble, we've seen some reversal candles, we've seen some engulfing candles on the S&P, on the semiconductors, on specifically Nvidia. Can the buyers stay with the Bitcoin trade and the altcoin trade? And one of the things I'll just mention here too is that it's very concerning. And I was just talking with Ben Cowan about this on our No Shill Zone
Yeah.
earlier, is that the scams are alive and prevalent and so crazy that to me is a warning sign. It's a be careful sign that the kind of the people are not investing because it's a good investment, but because it's an easy 100x on the next meme coin. And that's a warning sign we saw in 2020. So once we got to 20, so my initial call was 69,000 to 20. We achieved that. And then one of the things we talked about in our interviews is that the way we get to 10K is if the stock market collapses, right? If we see a 50% drop in the stock market, that's what will trigger Bitcoin to have that additional sell off to 10 or 9,000. That obviously didn't happen, right? And so I still think that Bitcoin is vulnerable to a massive liquidity issue. issue where you start to see the leverage in the system become too big, the stock market begins to decline, you see deleveraging occur, and Bitcoin could easily go back to 30 to 32. But as a trader, again, you have to be able to move with the trends, right, and with the charts. And so at this stage, unless we saw a depression, I don't see Bitcoin going back to those levels of 10K. But I do still
Okay.
think that once we see the markets pull back substantially 20, 30, 40% on the equity markets, we still should see a retrace to that 30 to 32,000 level. So in general, I think you're seeing a buy the news, I should say buy the rumor on the halving, just like the ETF. It's such a hyped up event. You're going to see obviously the ability to mine get much harder for a lot of these miners. So I do think that it's in general a longer term bullish scenario. But I would, if we run up into that halving, I would look for the same sort of sell off that we saw right after the spot ETF was approved, where we pulled back about 20%.
Crypto bull Michael Saylor has been on a Bitcoin buying spree, and he thinks the digital currency is on pace to replace gold. In a CNBC interview, Saylor remarked, "Bitcoin is certainly at least digital gold. It's going to eat gold. It's got all of the great attributes of gold and none of the defects of gold." Last week, the MicroStrategy founder shared on social media platform X that his company had recently acquired an additional 12,000 Bitcoins for nearly $822 million, using proceeds from convertible notes and excess cash. This purchase increases MicroStrategy's total holdings to 205,000 Bitcoins, now valued at over $15 billion, as the cryptocurrency continues to reach new highs. Soloway remarked that when hearing this, the first thing that comes to mind is classic Michael Saylor. Now let's redirect our attention to a video.
So the first thing I think about when you say that is like, that's classic Michael Saylor, right? Did we really
Right.
expect anything different to come out of his
No.
mouth? Now, having said that, I do agree that, if you ask me where this is in 30 years from now, yeah, I do absolutely agree that this could rival the market cap of gold. So I think you have that narrative, but again, it's a matter of what are investors expecting. Like if someone's buying today at 72,000 to 73,000, are they ready for the volatility that comes with that, which is corrections of 20 to 30 to 40 to 50%? And I think that's the kicker, is that when he says it, I think there's a lot of retail investors that think, oh man, I'll buy this now and in 5 years I'll be so rich. And they're not looking at the risks involved, the drawdowns. And so again, for me, absolutely. I think it's a fair statement. If you're looking at the next 20 to 30 years, he probably would tell you it's a lot shorter time frame. But for me, again, it's a matter of, are you going to tell investors that this is going here, and what's your time frame on it? I don't know if he gave a time frame on that, but I think that's an important factor. The one thing that caught my attention today on MicroStrategies is that it's up 12.5% today, while Bitcoin's up about 5%, right? So that's the first thing that gets my attention here, is that it seems to be outperforming Bitcoin, which means investors are using it as a leveraged trade on Bitcoin. And I would just caution investors and say to them that, listen, this can go up more than Bitcoin goes up. But remember, when Bitcoin pulls back 5%, this probably drops 15%. So again, to me, it's more of an opportunity where if you're looking for a leverage trade, long or short, on Bitcoin, you might be able to play MicroStrategies in that way. Now, I think again, the other thing to keep in mind is people that are investing in MicroStrategies, it's like people that invested in Tesla in 2021. They're buying into Bitcoin just as much as Michael Saylor. Michael Saylor is the champion of Bitcoin. He
Yeah,
has been. And so I think that carries with it a premium, just like Tesla did back in
definitely.
2021. So Bitcoin is obviously the pure digital gold, if you will. There's nothing really that rivals that at this point. Ethereum, the network is amazing, but you also have Solana nipping at its heels. You have a bunch of other coins that could come out and kind of rival it. So I do think that essentially investors in Ethereum have to say, okay, I'm investing in this because I believe in their network, not because it's a store of value like Bitcoin. Having said that, I think the key here is that you are at this resistance level just around 4,000. It's a pivot high from 2021 September. If we get through that, your next level should be around 4,400, which was the high from May of 2021. And then if we get through that, you're looking at around $5,000 on Ethereum. The one little caveat to this is just keep in mind that Ethereum continues to underperform Bitcoin. It hasn't yet taken out its all-time highs versus Bitcoin obviously has.
Right.
So there is a little bit of a difference there. And a lot of people would look at this and say, oh, well, this means this one should play catch up. I would just caution people that's not always how it works. There might be a reason why it's lagging. Maybe it's the competition from other coins causing it to lag.
As inflows into Bitcoin spot ETFs resume, institutional investors are reigniting their interest in the Bitcoin frenzy. With Bitcoin trading at record highs during the pre-halving rally, the original cryptocurrency is bullish. Anticipation builds for Bitcoin's breakthrough in 2024, with projections targeting $100,000 this season. As sentiment in the U.S. market towards Bitcoin grows increasingly bullish, hodlers anticipate this upward trend to persist well beyond the $75,000 mark. Will this bull lead Bitcoin above $100,000? We welcome your insights in the comments section below. If you found this content valuable, don't hesitate to give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to stay informed. Thank you for joining us on this journey.